Hello my friends, thanks for joining me for the flip through of this mid-century journal. I love it. Let's break it down. So on the front, or actually the cover, is burlap, vintage hanky, and on the inside we have vintage fabric. So that's what we have on the outside. We have a sash that's been sewn on. The burlap and vintage hanky have been sewn on as well, and you can see some buttons here. This is the spine, and we have some nice big buttons going all the way down the spine. I think that looks great. Here's the back. What else can I tell you about this? I don't think anything. It's just been sewn on, like I said. Oh yeah, and you'll notice that the vintage hanky sort of hangs over the top and the bottom, and I left it because it's scalloped and it's too beautiful to cut it. So I didn't think it was any harm in just letting it hang there and be what it is and keep it full and in its original shape. The sash, by the way, I just received from Paper Confessions with Karamia, and the color of it is absolutely perfect for this journal. All right, so when we open it up, you can see the interior fabric. It's a soft cover, but it's not like super soft. There is a file folder in between the fabric, so it's a soft spine, but again, not super soft. It's sometimes when it's all fabric, it's super soft, but it's not that. But it's not hard as if I used cardboard or something like that. So I'll mention real quick some of the things that you're going to notice as we flip through. This is a scrapbook pack, which was called Mid-Century, and you're also going to notice some authentic vintage ephemera and authentic vintage images that have been adhered to some of the tags and some of the journal. You're also going to notice some cotton lace on many of the pages, and also tabs, and the tabs are vintage seam binding, and some of them will have bulb pins with charms. This is a paper flip. I used lots of ribbon. You'll notice there's going to be trim all over the place. Here's another charm. It's a pineapple. This pocket has been sewn on because it's vellum, and vellum can get really wrinkly if we use glue, so I went ahead and sewed most of the vellum into the journal that I used. This is a vintage image of Marilyn Monroe. It came out of a book, and this is a piece of my art that I did. We call it the stairwell art because when Andrew and I had to go to a shelter for hurricane, he and I created art in the stairwell. So this is a vintage bridge score sheet, and this is a vintage Hot Rod magazine subscription tab that you would pull out and you'd fill it out, and then you would be able to get a subscription. And so these images here, this and this, and most of them are from 1950s Hot Rod magazines. We have a little rickrack here, a belly band, I used some seam binding down some of the pages as well as the cotton lace. This is some rice paper, buttons. You'll notice some buttons throughout. Some very pretty vellum paper. That came in the scrapbook pack, just so that you know. Vintage image that I cut out. This is a pocket, and I put a nice big tag in there. Vintage seam binding here, and a vintage button. So the scrapbook pack also had, I guess this is acetate, but it was printed on. It's beautiful. So instead of trying to glue it and not being sure if it would stay in place, I went ahead and sewed both of these pockets into the journal. Put nice big tags into each pocket. I love that you can see through them. I think it's very unique. And we have a peach colored rose. I felt like that went good with our vintage doily. Here's a belly band. I just tucked a couple of tags in there. This is a I think this is a vintage authentic photograph. If it's not, it's a Tim Holtz, and I can't remember. I created the tag, but now I can't remember if it's real or not. This is the other half of the vellum paper, rice paper, lace with a button, and you can see trim there, and a tab with a cute little bead. It's not really a bead though, it's a charm. This is an image from the Hot Rod magazine. Just some vintage paper, another bridge score sheet, and a nice big tag. So we have a nice mix of old and new in this journal. Rick Rack. This is a multiplication card. You could turn that into a writing tag if you wanted. You could use it as a bookmark if you wanted. This is a belly band, and you can see I layered this tag, and this is vintage, authentic vintage that I cut out from the magazine. And I think all of those images go so nicely with the kit here. I think it all came together really nice. A little green tassel. Another image that I cut out and adhered. Paper flip. It's got lots of trim. A tab and some lace. Added a button here. More vintage images. This is just paper. But this is another of the subscription forms, and out of the magazine where I got this, I cut these images out and I lined it just to make it stiff and make it hold up over time because it was getting a little tattered. And then this is just one of the tags that I created using one of my master boards. So here we have a little side tuck with a vintage image, and then this was more acetate. And so I sewed it onto cardstock, again, because I wasn't sure about how well it would adhere with glue, because I don't play with acetate that much, so I wasn't sure, and I wanted to be safe about it. You know, I wanted to be sure it would stay. Score sheet and a tag and an image, a vintage image. This was a card, and I just thought it was so cute, and I felt like I needed to put it in here because the fish is orange and it goes so well with that paper. Here we have a tag with a jukebox, and it says Fun Times, a blue button, another sewn acetate tag. This is more vintage seam binding. Trim and a button. Beautiful vellum paper, love it. The cutoff that I had, I sewed here and turned it into a pocket. More vintage images, so fun to play with them and add them into this journal. Don't they go well? Let me know if you think they go well. I think they just are perfect. Trim, and actually the green that you'll see throughout this journal is also seam binding, and I added a button. This flips up, and it flips up here as well. Vintage image. A couple of tags in this pocket. This was a fellow that was overseas in the armed forces, and he had restored his hot rod, which was a 36 Pontiac sedan, and his name was Corporal Herbert Glessman, and he was stationed at Camp Atterbury, Indiana. And he just writes about his car, and he wrote into the magazine. So it's fun because this journal does have some history in it because of the things like this that I added, and even the advertisements. I love this center spread here, and I added another peach rose charm and a green leaf and a fun orange bead. We have some, well, this trim is also on both of these pages down the edge. This was from the magazine, and it's dated 1951. This is just some authentic ephemera, And then this is another one of the subscription cards, and I added this calendar from June of 1951. It says Hot Rod Magazine, and this advertisement for Pennzoil motor oil. Here we have another car, and it's got all the information about the car. I don't see the year. I might have covered it by accident. Nice trim and seam binding, more seam binding with a charm. This is another piece from the magazine with just information about hot rods. Beautiful blue, green vellum. Pretty piece with trim. Vintage seam binding down the edge here. Oh, this is a vintage image. These guys were like hot rodding and at the races, and I guess this guy apparently must have won because he's holding a trophy. And then we have a piece of paper, but this tag, my friends, is a shaker. So I took some of the acetate and I sewed it on here and added the sequins to make it a shaker, and you can write on the back. I had fun doing that. This is some more rice paper with some pineapple trim. Some cotton lace here with a red button. Another old vintage car and a pretty tag. Here is another one of the shakers. I worked on some of this book during my Friday Lives, and I'm trying to think if we did one or two with this one. I think just one, but I can't really remember. But anyway, this is a vintage Winston cigarette advertisement, and I cut that out because I loved that it was in color. A lot of the magazine is not in color, so I cut that out. A little blast from the past. We have our butterfly charm here, and we have a yellow button. Over here we have this image of this beautiful lady. She was part of the cigarette advertisement, and I just cut up the whole advertisement, but she was too pretty to get rid of, so I wanted to add her to the journal. A little button here, a nice paper flip with another car cut out. I think the colors are perfect. This is a nice big pocket that I created with the acetate, and here is the tag that goes inside, and you can see I fussy cut that out of the book and made a tag out of it. That's fun. And then I fussy cut her out and I put her on this vellum, and there's no pocket or anything. It's just a space to look at. You could add paper to this, so you could journal on it or add a photo or whatever you wanted to do. It's another image that I fussy cut out of the book onto the pocket. And then here were some advertisements. I thought these were fun. I made these on the live, I remember. So this says, take the lead with pomade for well-groomed hair. And it's got this handsome guy, and then these two girls, they're like looking at him. And 2 ounces were 33 cents. And then here we have a club jacket specifically designed for car clubs. And I thought that was pretty fun too. Seam binding and trim up here. This is our cotton lace. This is some vintage trim, a button, and this, if you guys saw the mixed media video that I created, Discoveries in Mixed Media, we stiffened fabric, and this pink piece is from some of the fabric that I stiffened. And I have to tell you guys, it's really cool to do that. This is a scrap piece, and you can see that, like, if this was fabric, it would be bending a lot more. It would just be flapped all the way over. It's so fun to cut it and glue with it once it's stiffened. I've really enjoyed playing with it. So I had a little piece there. I figured I'd add it. This is a paper flip. Did I tell you that? I can't remember. So here's more from the Hot Rod magazine. This guy's on a scooter, and then here these people are in the Hot Rod Club, and they're all wearing their club jackets. Just such a great photo. A nice big tag in this one. Our little peach rose. Look, it matches perfect with the flowers on the page. And then over here we have, oops, 2 more tags, and these are for soap. And you can see it says 1 cent sale. Look at that. Isn't that something? Now these are vintage for sure, you can tell, but they're not from the Hot Rod magazine. They were from a different magazine, but the colors were perfect, so I added them. And here we have a key hanging on the ball pin, and here we have a little paper flip. Another paper flip, although just one piece of paper is on here, with a button and seam binding and trim and a tab. Some of the cotton lace. Here was a little advertisement for model cars. I thought that was cute. This is another piece of stairwell art. This moves out of the 50s into the 60s, but I still thought it worked. You could take this and add a piece of plain paper and then journal on the back if you wanted to, or add a photo, or use it in something else. Use it in a piece of your own mixed media if you wanted to. This is another piece of vellum, an acetate pocket that I sewed in with my sewing machine. Just put a nice big piece of paper in there. This is another paper flip here. You can see the sewing is exposed, which I like. I added a button to this. Vintage lace with a button. Another tab. Here we have another advertisement and a beautiful tag that I made using vintage materials actually. The tag is from a bird book cover, and that was definitely vintage. You can see as soon as I flip it over, you can see that is not bright white. And then I added a piece of vintage wallpaper, and then I added this brad and this stamp and this bird. The bird is not vintage, and neither is the trim. I love to combine the old with the new. Now here in this upper pocket, on the tab, we have a little charm, and then we have a vintage advertisement. And this lady was writing into the magazine about her husband, and before he went off to war, he had hot rodded his car, and she sent a picture in because she felt like her husband would like to see a picture of his car in their magazine. So I thought that was super cute, and that's dated January 1952. It was the Korean War, just so you know, in case you were wondering. And then this is another piece of stairwell art, which is simply a book page with a vintage advertisement on it, and then I did some stenciling on it, and that was it. That was so easy to do, but fun because I loved using the vintage advertising, and I didn't know that it would be going into a cool journal like this, so that's a bonus. This is the last page. This is an upper pocket, and in our upper pocket we have a vintage postcard, and somebody was writing to somebody, and it looks like they were writing to their Gram and Gramp. That's so cute. And then this is a vintage flyer for Maryland football. I just thought the colors were good and just kind of a fun thing, 1981. So this one's not quite mid-century modern, but it is still vintage, so we're gonna accept it. And this is the back cover, and this is the outside of the back cover. And then I'm going to show you the spine one more time. There it is. These are real wooden buttons, and I love them. I think they are perfect for this journal. And then having the one on the front I think is super cute. I didn't want to add anything else because I didn't want to take away from this beautiful vintage hanky. It's absolutely gorgeous. Look at it. Well, friends, thank you. This is going to be available in my Etsy shop if you are interested. I appreciate you having a look. Thanks for watching. See you soon.